What happens when the person you love slowly disappears and you're still asked to keep living? For years, Dami Roelse watched her husband fade through Parkinson's and dementia, becoming his caretaker long before she was allowed to grieve. When he was finally gone, the silence left behind became its own kind of collapse. What began as a walk into the wilderness at 65 became a 10-year journey across the Pacific Crest Trail, where grief, freedom, and something far greater than herself began to meet. Now, before we begin, if you're here because you're seeking truth, understanding, and a deeper relationship with your own life, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with someone who may be in a moment where things feel unsettled inside. Every conversation here is meant to offer perspective, support awareness, and remind you you're not alone. Welcome, Dami. Thank you so much for being here.
What a wonderful introduction. I love it.
Thanks.
Great. How you
That's pretty
put that
cool.
together? Yeah. No.
Can you go a little deeper into what you've lived through and your experience and how that shaped the work or perspective you bring into the world today?
Yeah. When the children are just leaving in your marriage and you're looking forward to having some great time with the person you love, and they become sick. First it was an accident, and then 4 years later, Parkinson's and all that started. Um, it's like it wasn't time yet, but it's never time when trauma happens. So it's never a good time. But that was like, whoa. And so I lived through that at a time when I was still working, when we weren't retired. It was a very difficult time to go through. And I describe, actually, if people are interested, I describe that in my other book, Fly Free, um, a, a memoir of love, loss, and walking the path. That book is also, a book about my spiritual quest in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did I need that when I became a caretaker, um, still a wife, but not a partner anymore. He changed so much that um, we didn't have that, what I always relied on, my rock, my partner, someone I could discuss things with. I couldn't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was um, that was the most tearing. It's like you've grown together as two trees, is how I describe it in that book. You're all wound together, and one part of that tree disappears, and I was so off balance. I had gained a lot of weight during that time. I think it was a way to keep me grounded, and menopause and things like that. And then all of a sudden I said, I need to drop that weight and need to find myself. So that's kind of what's behind. Eventually, it didn't happen right away. It was 2 years after he died that I decided to go hike my my backyard. I lived in Oregon. I had been in the Himalayas. I'd been all over the world, but I'd never hiked a long trail in in Oregon. I wanted to get to know my place. It wasn't to It had nothing to do with losing my husband, except that, I wasn't a caretaker anymore. So there was a new freedom in my life that I could actually do that. And luckily, I was working for the state and I had a good vacation package, so I could take off for 3, 4 weeks straight, which often people can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that journey began. And only once I started hiking there, is when I discovered that there was a lot of stuff I hadn't dealt with. The grief had been deep inside me, and there was no room for it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember writing once You know, when I got the call of his accident, I I'm the kind of person who just jumps into action. We got to do something. We're taking him to the hospital, and please show up there. That he almost died in that accident, so uh, it was close. So I just became the I can do person, and stayed that way for years. I never let the scream, the terror come out of me until I stood on a snowfield somewhere and high up in the mountains, and there was no one else except the universe or God or whatever you want to call it there. That's when I started letting that out. And that continued until it wasn't there anymore. So the last probably 4 years of, um, maybe 5 years even, you know, uh, remnants of that grief had been coming up. And then it was done. I felt it was done. But at that point, I had hiked so much and I loved it, and I had found what you would call the other dimension that you get in touch with when you're out in the wilderness, out in high mountains, in nature, that I went back for that to kind of really build that inside myself. That this is, I'm part of this big whole universe that's loving. And the second part of the title, first one is body. You got to have a body that can do it. But grace was what I discovered. And now I have that. I live that. I don't have to go to the mountains to find it. So,
That's an interesting, thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful. It's like there's a couple of things that popped into my head. Like one is the last thing that you said where you don't need to go to the mountains to find it because it ends up inside of us. But the desire or the need or whatever that is that we have as humans to put ourselves in that type of environment because it's so freeing. Like nature is so important and people don't understand anymore how important nature is because it's part of us. It's like even our brains are naturally, well, maybe not now, but they have been. Like the Earth's vibration is 7.62 hertz or whatever it is, megahertz.
yeah,
Megahertz? I can't remember. But the Earth vibrates at the same vibration as our brain. And
right.
we
Yeah,
connect through the earth. And that's how we do those things.
yeah.
Is that I think that's the draw though. What do you think?
It is. It is. You feel, um, especially when you are away for more than a week or 2 weeks. That's when you
Mm.
start to really feel the oneness, as some people say. I call nature my cathedral. I don't have to go to a church. I just have to go there. But that's where I can, you know, commune with the higher, um, or the other dimensions that are so part of us, and we in our current Western world have so lost touch with. And
Well,
I had
yeah.
to
Yeah.
to a great extent, except I always in my life, I mean, I was raised with nature as much as there was in Holland. The summers we spent camping under the dunes, and we just were on the beach, in the sun, in the water,
Mm.
the whole summer. And I think, the that experience of just being free and being out, I've had from very early on, luckily.
Mm.
And I've only lived in cities, briefly in Amsterdam and Portland, Oregon, but I've always been drawn to more the countryside. So
Mhm.
I discovered, I mean, when I came to the US, what really countryside and the wild was like. And it's what's kept me here, even though I don't particularly like what's going on in America. But,
That's a whole
you
nother
know,
conversation.
yeah, there is a wildness here that is so unique.
Yeah.
And, you know, um, I feel very, very thankful that I have a body that can go out there and survive in it. So yes, I was part of the Back to the Land movement in the 70s, and we just did all of that.
Yeah. Another hippie? Did I get introduced to another hippie?
Absolutely.
Okay. I've had quite a few of you guys on here. The
Yeah, yeah.
older generational hippie original, flower child type of thing that like,
No, that's why we're so disappointed. We thought we
yeah.
could fix the world. Well, we can't. That's a good
Well, we
lesson.
can't because nobody will listen to us, but that's beside the point, right? Like I said, whole
But it
other
was about
conversation.
love, I'll tell you. It was
Yeah.
definitely about experiencing love. And yes, people use drugs, but I was lucky enough that I got to experience it with a teacher in the Himalayas in 72. And
Wow.
so I knew that was there. And my whole life has been sort of a searching for how to manifest and express. So
Yeah.
that the book about actually experience it through walking and hiking. Because I used
And what
to,
is the name of the recent book?
I'm
What's
recent
the
book
name
is
of the I'm sorry, say again?
Body and Grace. Sorry. The new book,
Okay.
Body and Grace.
Right. Okay. Okay. So we're going to get into a couple of things here that are quite interesting that you brought up. My head goes off in a million different directions trying to piece this stuff together. Um, when you were talking about the wilderness, and then what came up for me was like you said, how many days? 10 to 12 days in the wilderness, or whatever that time frame was. Like most people can't do that. There's
Right.
no food store. There's no gas station. Well, if you're walking, you don't need one, but there's nothing out there but you and source, God, whatever you call your higher power, nature, connection with the animals and all of that stuff. And what's interesting to me is as a human, as a species, we understand that connection. As a Western world, we don't get that. We focus on and place more importance on uh, business, on the cities, on doing our thing, whatever that is. And what it does is it fractures our connection to the wilderness, which I think in some way that was intentional because when we're connected with nature and higher power, um, we have a more of a connection within and we can think for ourselves and we can create and we can do all these things, but when we're set up in a city type environment we lose that connection completely because especially with the taller buildings like in cities like in New York and whatever, you don't get the sun. There's no connection with nature and it breaks that and separates us from that. I wonder why. Meh. But
Okay.
I feel it's just an important thing to recognize that that connection is pure and primal and keeps us connected with our truth. What do you think? I have a feeling you pretty much agree with that, but do you have anything else to add to it?
Um, well, there have been cities since way, 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 way back. People have left the nomadic world.
Hmm.
A large portion of people to put in fact in cities because that's how you kind of control, nature. You started controlling nature. Before that, people moved around and let nature
Hmm.
give them what they needed. And so, yes, the nature was a partner. And, you better be good to it or else you're not going to survive. And we have lost that. And I also think, and then we just do more and more and more control of our environment and become very dependent on all our comforts. When you live in a home, and some homes may not be as comfortable as others, but when you live in a home, you're insulated from weather changes, temperature changes. Um, you don't have to adapt to that anymore. And one of the good things of going out into the wilderness or into nature for long periods of time is that your body um, builds resilience because you do encounter dangerous things. Your body has to adjust to extremes in temperature, sometimes extremes in terrain, and so that affects your brain, and your brain, you know, and it gets settled in the back of your brain, really. First, you use your prefrontal cortex to um, think how to survive and for. I don't go out without food. By the way, I carry it. You carry, and you're as successful as what you can carry. So that's important. But then your body has a resilience rhythm deep in the brain that so when you're not out in the wilderness doing this, you can still respond to stresses in a much more, effective way. And that stays with you because it's not temporary. It changes your brain to do that. Just like you said in meditation or in certain practices, we change the amygdala, we change the thermostat of our inner brain where all the emotions live, where all the trauma uh, that encounter changes um, the setting of that the amygdala between left and right brain. And if it's always set too far open because you went from one trauma to another, and as a therapist in my past, I know this. So sexual abuse is a repetitive trauma that happens, and so people can't shut down a one-time trauma. And if it's really fear, then the repetitive lesser traumas or
Well, that's
seemingly
complex PTS. That's actually complex PTSD. That's like stacked
it is.
traumas one
So
on top of the other.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they work with veterans now. They take them into the wilderness on those longer hikes
Mhm.
because it changes their brains. So, and my what you want to? Oh, what I said about the
Oh,
cities.
yeah.
We also it's the speed and the exposure to all kinds of radiation. So there's a
Mhm.
speed of living. I talked earlier a little bit. The Earth is the same speed as our brain. Walking is also what you discover is a rhythmic movement that allows you to process what's going on around you. And in
Mhm.
cities, you can't do it. You're in overwhelm all the time. I am for sure now. I haven't lived in a city for a long time. It's just all the clanging, dinging, bing. Some of those ear things to just shut it out.
I
Overstimulated.
do. I do. I have what do they call those headphones that
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
clear yeah, cuz it's too much.
Noise canceling ones.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's too much for the body. And what's interesting is the body knows how to do all this. Like all these things that you're talking about is normal for a human, right? It's like
Right.
adaptability. It creates this adaptability to the earth, to everything. But when you're living in a city and you've got so much stimulation and chaos, our bodies can't take it. Like years ago, 20 years ago, I think it was, I wrote something down where it was like, our bodies move like kind of like the ocean, it's like flowy and that's what we know. And that's who we are.
May I interrupt you? Every step, Feldenkrais discovered that. So look at the bottom of, if you do it
Hmm.
very slowly, you'll see how the whole spine just the head moves.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So you
what's
do that all day, like 17 miles a day, you are totally in
right.
what
Right. Where now we've got the chaos and the noise and too many things happening at the same time and multitasking and all of it. And our
and
bodies can't
everything
take that.
sitting.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no relief from it So why do you think people have anxiety? Why do you think people are depressed? I mean, it's obvious what it is. The obviousness doesn't hit us because we're in it. And we don't know that it's obvious until if somebody says something, or it becomes obvious, or we catch a cold, or we get sick, or something happens, or we have an accident. And that's when everything slams us into bed. And it's like, all right, time to slow down. You need to focus on you, and stop all this stuff out here. And one of the things, I'm actually a veteran and I know about these excursions. I've been wanting to do that. I'm still trying to convince myself to go on one of these wilderness things with them. Cuz I've always had this dream about doing this. Like I can picture myself doing it, and I love hiking, but I like day hikes. And sometimes I forget to pack everything I need. So there's a learning curve there. But I know, I mean, I have friends of mine who have gone on these things and it's changed them, veteran friends of mine, and it's changed the way that they connect with themselves and with other people. So I'm glad you brought that up because that is very helpful for that. The one thing I wanted to ask you about before no, let me go into this part because this is like you brought up your grief. Um, there's an opportunity for everyone because we are meant to grieve. That's some of the work that I've done with others has been through grief. Um, so mourning a loss, no matter what kind of loss it is huge. And you brought up something that I have discovered in my own grief healing journey, and I call it a primal scream. Like you were talking about going up and being up in the wilderness in the mountains and getting to
A peak or
the peak or
I said the snowfields or something. Yeah.
whatever, the highest level of, and nobody's there. And it's this like huge, I don't even know what it is. You'd have to describe that piece of it. But you can scream, primal screams clear us out. And when you mentioned that, I was like, wow, that's so cool that you were able to do that. Like I've had primal screams in my bedroom, but never in wilderness. I would love to
Right.
do something like that. What was that like for you? The piece of the grieving and doing that scream and all of that. What was that like?
Well, as you said, I'm one of those hippies. And in the 80s, I was exposed to all the new age therapies because I also became a therapist.
Okay.
Therapy, we had breath therapy, so for me, it just comes naturally. I have the freedom to express myself. I think there's probably 50 different forms of therapy that were discovered, and I did them all. I tried them all. And
Yeah,
I
I
wasn't
know
even
the
a
feeling.
traumatized young person, but, I was just interested in how does this all work? And this
Yeah.
is where I want to go with that. So before there was such a thing as somatic therapy, I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yep.
I already knew that. So there's a connection between mind and body. Everything we experience creates a ripple in our musculature, not the skeleton, in the
Mm-mm.
musculature. Hmm? Right. And normal little traumas, we just by movement, we walk out of it. It's like the sea going over the sand. It washes it clean, and you do that with your breath and your normal living. Do not get erased with just your breath. To do anything as we did in primal uh, therapy, and we did in breathing therapy and stuff like that. So you have to go much deeper with it. So when you're moving every day, why didn't I go meditate for, long retreats? Because my body would be still. It would also, but I think it would have been much more painful, much more painful. As in the stillness, it rises to the surface. Moving would just sort of, bits and pieces would just sort of come because you're moving your muscles. And there's no stopping it. And if you have some awareness, which I did, then you let it happen. and go, okay, or got through that one. And, you walk off sort of process that. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to say about that.
Well, thank you. And I didn't know you were a therapist. Did I? I'm not sure if I knew that. Um, I've always been interested in therapy and the mind, and I do a lot of research for my own healing process on Carl Jung and that kind of thing. And somatic therapy, I dove headfirst into that in 2021, I think. It was just prior to me going out on the road in my nomad uh stint for 8 months and doing another podcast I called The Ride of My Life, because I was basically doing what you're talking about. When I discovered the somatic therapy, which they call it now, and all the things that you're talking about led into that. I was in the same thing. I mean, before that, I'm like trying this and trying that, trying to figure it all out. Da, da, da. And when I figured out that it, it's held inside of us, the stress response creates an environment where we hold all of that stuff inside of us. And the really from my experience, the only way that I was able to release it was what you're talking about. I did temper tantrums. I did um yelling. I did breath work, like the deep breath work that you're talking about. I mean, it touches places that we don't even know exist and we're afraid to go to. But here's the crazy thing. It doesn't last. Like, we have this fear of getting stuck in that pain. But that's not what happens. We go in, we allow these energies to move around, we let our body release the energies, we cry, which is an important thing for those of you who don't know. Crying releases the chemicals that are being held in the body. So we release all these energies from the emotions and feelings that we hold on to so tightly. And then it all just kind of everything just kind of lifts off of us eventually. It's not a one time thing. Trust me on that one. But when you get into the somatic stuff, you can cognitive your way through all kinds of things. I think our Western society is based mainly on thinking about how we're going to heal, right? That never worked for me. I
Yeah.
had to get into that.
Talk, 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 talk.
Talk, right. And I'm good at talking, as you can see, but that's not
Yeah.
helpful all the time. Sometimes you got to release that energy, especially as you brought up earlier, when we're sitting all day. If you're not exercising and you're sitting and you're not doing, you sit at work and then you sit in the car for an hour driving home and you're sitting, and then you get home and you sit and watch TV, you're not releasing any sort of energy that you built up during the day. You're letting it
Nope.
fester. That's what we do. So being able to do this different type of work is so helpful to release all this stuff so we can create that space, that clear space that shows up. And I was talking to Dami before we got started, and it's like that for me, it was more of making room for the flow of this of subtle energy to come in rather than forcing, you know, an endpoint, an understanding, because it didn't already always work that way. So that's how it felt like for me. It was really yeah, a lot of hard work, but worth it. So I get it.
Well,
I get it.
I just like to go back to the book where I wrote the book, is that um, walking is a normal activity. Humans, it's in our DNA to walk. It's how we stay healthy. It's how we process things. And when we were still nomadic, people walked, you know,
Go
and
figure.
that's been taken away. So
Right.
it's there's nothing fancy about it. It's not some crazy therapy or anything like that. Just walking every day, duh. And you'll be better in so many
Yeah.
ways. Um,
Yeah.
no, you don't have to do what I did. Um, I discovered other things in that process. I go a little deeper, but
Mhm.
but that's not what it's about. I mean, the book really tells you about, as we spoke earlier, about that we are part of a much larger benevolent universe. And that's hard for people to believe anymore these days.
Well,
They
we
see all
lost
this
the
evil
connection.
and all.
Yeah.
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 And they see all this evil. So more than ever do we need
Mm.
now to walk away from our news media and from our constricted environments and go back to the basics. So you live in a city, go walk in a park. Just find a
Yeah.
park and walk it every day, and you will notice the difference. You don't have to feel stuck there. It's not like you can't be healthy while living in a city. That would be really disastrous. But you have to kind of find the things that and in touch with who you are as a human being. What are we?
Mm-hmm.
What are we made
Mm-hmm.
for? What can we do? So yeah, my book is it's kind of about an adventure. A lot of people, well, how do you do it? Like you said, I don't know if I could go for a week or so. Well, I always say, go to your edges. Go live where you fear to live because that will expand you. And that's what it was for me. I wasn't that afraid in my life. I didn't have a lot of trauma. I have a privileged background, nothing wealthy or anything, but I have a privileged background of loving parents, a large family that looked after me. And so I didn't have to process all that. It, to me, it was actually quite amazing how much trauma there was when I became a therapist in this as a result of drinking and sexual abuse. It was horrendous. And that all happened, after World War II. And that's how people numb themselves. So, but that's a whole other story. No, the basics is live with your move that fine, sleep when it's dark, things like that.
Doing the best we
Turn the
can with
lights
it.
off at night. Yeah, it's hard. I live in a place
Yeah.
where I can see a night sky. I can just
Yeah.
step out on my porch and there is no, um, you know, um, there are
Light
no big
pollution?
lights, no light
Yay.
pollution. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
but at
How
some point
about
in your life, you start choosing them. You take one small step after another. It's like, this is
yeah.
important. And when you feel that it works for you, stick with it. And then the next
Mm,
thing and the next
yeah.
thing. So
Yes.
yes,
That's
there
my
are books you can buy my first book on how to go backpacking. It's called Walking Gone Wild, How to Lose Your Age on the Trail. And it has all the science in it and also how from how to become a walker, how to become a hiker,
mm.
and then how to become a long distance hiker, how to choose
What's
your
the
gear,
name?
how to prepare for you.
No. Okay.
It's called Gone Wild. There we go.
Walking Gone Wild.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
has stories in it. It's an easy read. There's some,
Yeah.
journal entries from the trail and
Oh,
just to
nice.
kind of whet people's appetite, and then
Yeah.
very practical charts on how to train.
Cool stuff. This is
Very
the stuff
practical.
I
I'm a
need.
practical person. Yes.
Good. So I want to jump back in though to your hiking and your backpacking because that's intriguing to me.
The
Well,
10
healthy.
essentials.
Yeah.
Do you
Good.
know the 10
Okay. So,
essentials yet? How
yeah.
to survive in the wilderness.
Yes, perfect. But I want to go a little deeper into it because you had mentioned the connection with the source on your trip, on your backpacking trip. I don't even know if you can call it a trip. I don't know what to call it.
Journey. Let's
Um
call it a journey.
a journey. Yes, perfect. Okay. So how does the day-to-day experience of hiking and backpacking attune you to a higher power?
Well, how does that happen? It's an interesting question. I have never really answered it like that. But I always find that the daily backpacking routine is like a retreat center where you do the same thing all day over and over.
Mhm.
You break camp in the morning, you wait until it's light, although some people that are mileage eaters, they get up when it's still dark. You break camp as the birds start singing, you live in a natural rhythm. And then you put that pack on your back and you start walking and you walk all day and things happen. You get Well, the Pacific Crest Trail is one of the most beautiful trails in the world, and I can say that because I've been on many of them. I haven't been on the New Zealand ones. Those are really beautiful too. Compared to the Continental Divide Trail here, which is another one from Mexico to Canada, and I've been doing stretches here in New Mexico on it, and AT, which a lot of people know, the Appalachian Trail on the East Coast.
I've been on parts of that one, yeah.
There's no comparison with the Pacific Crest Trail because
Wow.
you're at a higher altitude. You have these, the incredible mountains, the Sierras, Nevadas. You have the Cascades all the way from Oregon to Washington. You're at altitudes between 4,000 and 14,000.
About
You
how to
are
breathe,
exposed
right?
to beauty, and beauty elevates
Uh-huh.
us. But the
Yeah.
other aspect that I noticed, especially in the Sierras, when you have a climb, a steep climb every day. You go up and down, up and down. Um, Something happens to your brain at higher altitude. The brain really slows down, and you reach that state of emptiness that they talk about in meditation when you do a long, focused meditation, days on end. You reach that state of sort of the edges disappear between you and the universe. You become part of it. Your body is not the first and foremost thing that you focus on, and so you start to feel that there's this veil between you and the other dimension is thinning. And
Mm.
when they say a lot about monasteries in Japan and in the Himalayas, they're all at high altitude. So I think it's for a reason because of that, not just because the monks happen to live there, because there's plenty of them living lower in the plains too. But they always say go to the mountains and find God. Um, and I think it's about altitude and what it does to your brain. It changes things in your brain so that
Yeah.
you can actually see or experience the other dimension. And,
Yeah.
that happens sort of every day, and you're not even conscious of it
Mm.
until it hits you. Like, oh, okay, this is it.
When
And
did it
so
hit while
that's
you were
why
doing
that's why I wrote poetry often, and my book is interspersed with poems,
Mhm.
realizations that you have um,
Yeah.
amidst the practical, how many more miles do I have to get to that particular campground or camping spot where I want to be by the water. You like to
Mhm.
camp by water if you can, because otherwise you have to carry a lot of water. So, so there is a daily practicality of I've got to get from here to here. But on that route, you're exposed to God all the time. Well, can't
So
say that
that's
I feel that when I drive in a car,
right.
it
Yeah.
makes
I've noticed personally, even though I've been in higher altitudes, and I've noticed that my writing changes when I'm in a higher altitude, where it like stuff flows through me um
yeah, yep,
faster
yep,
and more awareness and all that kind of thing. So I get what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. I love that.
yeah.
That's really cool.
And that's when I
Um,
hear voices, it tells me what to do in life. I mean, that started happening, so,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'll take it. Okay, we're going in the right
Yeah,
direction. I'm good. So now we're talking now about elevation.
yeah.
Now, what happens to your body and mind when you hike these long distances? Like,
Oh, yeah,
does it, because I know when I'm lost in the woods, I'll go in the woods and I'm like, I made a wrong turn. And this is a learning experience. It's not easy to do this. It's like, I didn't make the right turn. And we're talking paths, but they have all these little paths in different
yeah,
directions and all that. And I'll make a wrong turn. And then my entire body goes into fight or flight because it's like,
yeah. And
I don't know where I
yeah.
am. So what's about that when you're hiking, when you're with your body and mind, with these longer distances?
Well, so the distances of walking all day, every day, say for 5 weeks, you know, yeah, your body becomes this machine. I
Mm,
really experience it as a machine that the body can do it. It's our mind that holds us back. It's like, oh, this is too far or whatever. And, that's why I say at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm tired. It's my mind that's tired. My body's probably tired too, but it can do another 5 miles that I don't want to do. No.
right. Yeah.
So you discover that you can do physically way more than people allow themselves to experience. I think that's where, people who do more extreme things, they all discover that. They all discover to trust their body. So you get a trust in this machine that you are in, of course there's more to it than a machine, but it doesn't complain. It doesn't have, the muscles don't have a consciousness and say, no, if you keep it, damn it, uh, it will just do it if you let it. So there's that
Right.
with the distances. Um, could you repeat the question? There was something else that you asked me about. Um,
It's just the body and the mind when you're hiking long
oh,
distances.
yes.
Like,
So the mind just gets quiet. There is really not much to struggle with. You have everything you need, hopefully. That's the first 24 hours. Certainly did I forget. And then once
mhm,
I've gone through a whole night to 24 hours and I know, oh yeah, that's there, or it isn't there, then I'll have to make do. Then I stop worrying because I have what I need right there on my back. And I have, I've been trained so I can do whatever the plan that I've made. So
mhm,
you don't have the everyday things that, you know, get you in daily life of information floating through you. And I don't listen. A lot of young people listen to music or things on podcasts.
yeah.
It takes me out of that world. I don't do that. Um, so it's just quiet and I absorb what's around me. I live with what's around me. I think it's the worst enemy for the current generation is the speed with which we are exposed, the overstimulation that happens.
And technology, of course, that's part of the problem.
Technology produces that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what would you say to someone like me who has an extremely analytical mind, whose mind does not stop thinking, even sometimes even when I'm out, just walking or doing a hike?
Of
What would you
course.
say to
Yeah.
somebody like that? Would it go away?
Well,
No.
no, thinking never stops. We think,
Yeah.
as Buddhist practitioners, that if you meditate enough, there won't be any thought. The whole Zen idea. No, there's always thought. Thought is part of
Thinking.
who we are.
Here we go.
You know,
Yeah.
it can be the thought about a fly around your head. It can be a thought about a little itch in your knee. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But there are moments that happen, and that's like race. It happens during meditation. It happens during, when you do something for a long time. I don't know if you've ever done, if you're a creator, if you're creative and you're on a project and you're really focused, everything else gets shut out.
Mm,
Mikhailovsky, I can't say his very long name, calls the flow. You're getting into the flow
mhm.
and you come out of that energized. There's nothing
Yeah.
stopping you. And
Yeah. That makes
sometimes
sense.
the flow is just experiencing the flow of the universe. It's not your flow. It's not you're not creating anything. Um, but those are really um, very pleasant experiences, but they're not the end goal of living or anything like that. But they're definitely wonderful side effects that happen. So yes, your mind will quiet. I can guarantee you that. But
Mhm.
I don't know how long you have to walk before that happens.
Well, I've gotten better at it. As I've gotten older, it has cleared out a little
No,
bit
it's
more, and
not your
I feel.
doing.
Huh?
You're not at a kind of that allows.
Okay. Okay. That sounds better.
We have a choice in
We
what
always have a choice.
we let into our life.
Mhm.
Now, not always. I wouldn't say always, but we have a choice under many circumstances of no, not that. No, not that.
Hmm.
and you do
Yeah.
what's appropriate for you. So,
Yeah. Since you brought up this connection and the altitude piece of it, something hit me to ask you. Like we were talking earlier about the amygdala, and they've been doing research, and people do mushrooms and whatever, which affect the amygdala. When you're in a higher altitude, it does the same thing. But when you were getting into that piece where it was like everything kind of shifts and the flow of the universe comes through, and all these different things are happening, that's part of what the amygdala is set up to do, to connect us to a higher power, right?
hmm hmm
Can you explain, like, for people who don't really, because the amygdala has become a hot topic lately. Can you explain exactly how that works within this context?
no, I can't.
You
I'm not
can't.
that kind of. No, I'm not that
Right.
kind of a scientist. That says, "Oh, this is exact." I can only tell you because we're talking about a book that I'm publishing, what I experienced, not
Well,
the
that's what I
why
mean.
to how.
Through your experience, do you know how the amygdala creates that, or creates the connection or anything like that? Not necessarily the scientific part of it, but the connection part of it. Because isn't that part of the connection with the higher power? I mean,
Well,
I could be
yeah,
wrong. I'm
if it
just throwing
happens
this.
through the amygdala, so be
Yeah.
it. But I did. You do experience. I do experience connectedness with all,
Mhm.
great all. Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially when I hike solo, and
Okay.
when I don't talk much when I do that. And
Yeah.
there was a stretch that I did during COVID in Northern California for 3 weeks. I met maybe one or two people a day, have a short exchange, but I was basically with me and the trees, a lot of trees there,
Mhm.
and the rocks and the flowers. I I found, and it's very profound, that a question would arise because as humans, if we're not totally jaded, we're still curious. We wonder why. A question would arise in me about things that I saw, patterns that I saw in the leaves or in the trees or you know, and the answer would just sort of come to me. When I
Yeah.
Googled it later, it was correct. I would can say, well, you're a really smart person, so you figured out why the trees were doing this or that. No, I think they just told me, and not in a voice tone, but in just sort of information was exchanged between us.
Interesting. Okay.
I so love the trees and the rocks and the flowers that they are they're often way better friends than people. So,
And they're way more connected.
and I felt connected. So there is
Mhm.
a general connectedness with the world around me, not the world like a big city world, but maybe
Mhm.
you can feel it there too. I don't know. I think some people do have that. They somehow able to step into that.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, it comes through nature. So,
I get it. I get it. I love that. I'm
okay,
going to go ahead and ask you the questions that I ask all my guests.
okay.
What is the one thing you would offer someone who knows something isn't right in their life and doesn't know what to do next?
Start taking time, be it 5 minutes, hopefully 15, and just sit, not do anything,
Mhm.
and just say, I'm open to whatever I need to do. I don't know. I'm waiting for instructions, is what I call it. Just do that once or twice a day would be great. Building that into your life to have that moment, and the answers will come.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. So, how would you define awakening?
I would say it's a moment of um, right time, right place, right circumstances um, that connects you with the energy that drives this universe.
Mm,
So um, some people call it insight, others call it an aha moment. As I experienced when I was hiking in the Himalayas, and it was slow going because I was at 15,000 feet or something. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, um, I realized that I wasn't going anywhere and that all my hard work in meditating and to get to that awakened state, all there was this here now.
Mm.
That I call an awakening. So it had a lot to do with the circumstances. Again, altitude. Again, not distracted by all kinds of city-like stimulation, but just being in a natural environment for days on end that set me up for that. And those awakenings, but it can happen also during, a quiet time in my life or um, being among a group of people and all of a sudden, things connect. So, um, yeah, it's, you can't make it happen, which is very difficult for us Western controllers.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
that's
you
for
have
sure.
to create, like I said in the other answers, you have to create space. That you can do, create
Hmm.
space or a slower pace in your life so that this information can come through.
Yeah, not making it happen is absolutely true. It's more in my mind, it's always been more of a recognition. Most of my life, I was a control freak, so I was always trying to control. Even awakening, I was trying to control. Right,
Of course.
make it happen, make it happen, and then finally, when it started to happen, not that it's the great. Sometimes it's challenging when the awakenings happen, but it became more of like, oh, that's what's happening right now. So I recognized it and then I could just allow it to happen rather than trying to figure it
Hmm.
out, analyze it, or whatever. And that made it a lot easier for me when I was going through mine. So that was always fun. What do you believe soul divinity is?
Soul divinity. I think it's your ultimate innate God being. You know, we all are. We all are that love. And um, if you are lucky enough to get that experience in this life, in this body, which is not easy to get, then that will sit inside you. So I was very fortunate that my guru in India did a transference of power, and he allowed me to experience it. That didn't mean I could keep it. I only have memory of it,
Hmm.
but it was such a powerful memory that it set me on a path of finding ways to re-experience that or to come closer to that.
Mm.
But soul divinities. Look at a baby. A baby is just that, and then we lose it, and then we have to find it again.
Hmm.
So as I'm coming closer to my death, um, I will just sort of merge into that
Mm.
um, dimension. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you for that. How can people get in touch with you?
They can email me at dami.roelse, my name, at gmail.com. They can go to my website, transformation-travel.com. Um, it says it all. I've done things that were definitely transform me and that can transform you, and you find everything there. Um, and they can look on, if they're Substack subscribers, they can find me there, Walk with Dami at substack.com. And I've put out a weekly post there on Sundays about things that awakenings that happen while I'm walking at 2 miles an hour or, yeah. Just,
Those are the best ones.
and then I have a Facebook page, Walk with Dami, um, and a group for women over 50, walking women 50 plus. So if you're interested in walking, hiking, backpacking, that's where you'll get a lot of information and a lot of inspiration.
That sounds really cool. I'm hoping if you did not send that link to me, go ahead and send me that one for the group. if you can do that, because I'm going to put all of these
Yeah.
links in the
No, no, no.
description. Way, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap?
Um, what I'd like to share is that the easiest thing and the hardest thing is to live day to day, step by step. Um, we're impatient to get somewhere. We're impatient to forget things, leave things behind because they're unpleasant. Um, but it is one step after another step. It could be one act, small acts build into bigger, bigger, bigger acts. And you're never too old to give meaning to your life.
That's right. Say that again.
You're never too old to give meaning to your life.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dami. Thank you for sharing your journey with us today. You've reminded us that even when love changes form through loss, the path forward can open in ways we never expected. And to our audience, may this conversation remind you that grief and freedom can sometimes walk the same trail. Thank you for being here with us on Awakening Soul Divinity. Thank you for being here. Click on one of the videos below to keep going on your healing journey. And don't forget to subscribe.